In a quiet little village tucked between silver hills and whispering woods, there lived a kind and curious girl named Dora. Dora had big, round eyes the color of warm cocoa and a laugh that sounded like wind chimes in the spring. She lived in a small cozy cottage with a round blue roof and a garden full of sleepy daisies that nodded off in the moonlight. Every night, after brushing her teeth and tucking herself into her cloud, soft bed, Dora would gaze out of her round window and wonder about the dreams waiting just beyond the stars. Her room was filled with soft pillows, a nightlight shaped like a glowing mushroom, and shelves of storybooks that smelled like warm paper and magic. One gentle evening, as the sky turned from pink to lavender and the moon yawned high above the hills, Dora felt something special in the air. The breeze outside her window was different. It wasn't just cool, it was curious. It tickled her cheeks and whispered her name like it had a secret to share. So Dora sat up in bed, rubbed her eyes, and padded over to the window in her fuzzy socks. The air smelled like honey and dreams, and just beneath the stars, something shimmered and floated by. It was a feather, not just any feather, but one that glowed faintly with soft golden light. It drifted down from the sky with the lightness of a giggle and landed on her windowsill so gently. It didn't even wake the drowsy ladybug sleeping nearby. Dora picked it up and held it close. The feather was warm and gentle in her hand, and as she touched it, a hush fell over the world. A quiet hush, like the whole village had taken a deep breath to listen. Then, very softly, a voice as light as a whisper floated into her ears. "Come find the dreamy feather field, Dora. Follow the feathers." Dora blinked, but she wasn't afraid. The voice was kind and soft, like a lullaby. She looked out the window and saw another glowing feather drifting down, and then another, and another. They floated like sleepy snowflakes, each one shining faintly as it landed softly along the garden path, making a trail that shimmered like starlight. She tiptoed back to her bed, pulled on her softest slippers, and wrapped her favorite blanket around her shoulders, the one with little stars sewn into the corners. She gave her stuffed bunny, Mr. Fluff, a gentle hug and tucked him under her pillow. "I'll be back soon," she whispered to him. Then Dora opened her front door as quietly as a sigh and stepped outside into the moonlit night. The air was cool and full of wonder. The feathers floated ahead of her, lighting the way like tiny lanterns. Each step Dora took made the grass hum gently beneath her feet. The daisies turned their sleepy heads to watch her pass, and the trees bowed their branches low, as if to wish her sweet dreams on her journey. The path of glowing feathers led her past the garden gate and down a soft hill, where fireflies blinked like slow, blinking stars. A gentle wind brushed through her hair, and the stars above shimmered just a little brighter, as though they were smiling. As Dora followed the feather trail, she noticed that the world was growing quieter and cozier. The trees stretched taller but softer, their trunks smooth like velvet. The leaves above her rustled like lullabies, and the ground beneath her slippers felt like walking on marshmallows. She walked and walked, until the path opened into a wide field that glowed under the moonlight like a blanket of dreams. This was not an ordinary field. This was the dreamy feather field. Feathers of every color and glow floated gently in the air. They drifted slowly, dancing on invisible breezes. Some were pale blue like morning sky. Others were soft pink like strawberry milk. They sparkled and shimmered and made no sound at all, just a hush of wonder and peace. Dora stepped into the field, her eyes wide with gentle amazement. The feathers brushed against her arms and cheeks, soft as whispers. They didn't tickle or startle. They just made her feel safe and warm, like being wrapped in a smile. Far in the middle of the field stood a tall tree with silver bark and leaves that looked like tiny feathers themselves. The tree hummed a quiet, deep lullaby that Dora could feel in her chest. It was the kind of song that made your heart feel slow and sleepy, like a music box in the wind. She walked toward the tree, and as she did, the feathers gathered around her, circling gently like friends. One by one, they nestled into her blanket, her slippers, and her hair. They seemed to know her name, and they seemed to be waiting for her. At the base of the tree was a soft, round cushion made of the fluffiest feathers, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Dora sat down on the cushion and felt a calmness settle over her like a warm cup of cocoa. The field sighed around her, and the stars twinkled gently, as if they were blinking slowly, ready for sleep too. Then a small voice, sleepy and sweet, spoke from the tree. "Welcome, dream traveler. You have found the dreamy feather field. Rest here a while, more dreams are waiting just ahead." Dora smiled and closed her eyes for a moment. The wind was quiet. The feathers floated like thoughts in the air. Everything was soft. Everything was safe. And the dream was only just beginning. The feathers swirled gently in the air, like little lullabies made of light. Dora sat quietly on the soft feather cushion beneath the silver tree, her blanket tucked around her shoulders, her slippers still warm from the walk. The tree's humming lullaby drifted through her softly, like a song she almost remembered from a dream long ago. Then, as gently as a breeze across a sleepy lake, a small creature peeked out from behind the tree. It was no taller than Dora's knee and looked like a mix between a bunny and a cloud. Its fur was fluffy and pale blue, and it had ears that curled like cinnamon rolls. Two sleepy eyes blinked up at her, and a tiny voice said in a whispery tone, "You're Dora, aren't you? We've been waiting for you." The creature waddled closer and sat beside her on the cushion, curling its fluffy tail around its feet. Dora smiled and nodded. She felt calm and curious, like everything around her was part of a quiet dream. "My name is Pillow," the little creature said. "I'm a whisperkin. We live in places where dreams begin. And this field, this is where the softest dreams start." Dora ran her fingers through the feathers at her feet. They shimmered and giggled softly, like they liked being touched. The field stretched far and wide, glowing gently under the moonlight. Tiny lights floated up from the ground like bubbles, and far in the distance, Dora could see what looked like the shape of a gentle hill, made entirely of snoring flowers. Pillow gave a gentle bounce and looked up at her with his round, sleepy eyes. "Would you like to visit the feather nests?" "They're just over there," he said, pointing toward a path of floating feathers. "That's where dreams are born." Dora nodded slowly, her eyes growing wide with wonder. She stood up, holding her blanket around her shoulders like a cape. The soft wind brushed her cheeks and made the feathers in her hair flutter gently. So together, Dora and Pillow began walking along the glowing feather path. Each step was quiet and light, like walking on whipped cream. The feathers floated beside them, some brushing against Dora's arms, others floating ahead like sleepy fireflies showing the way. As they walked, the air became even softer. The path curved slowly, and the sky above them deepened into a velvety indigo. Stars blinked slowly, like they were nodding off one by one. A gentle hush filled the air, the kind that made you want to yawn and stretch and cuddle into something warm. Soon, they reached a small hill where giant nests made of glowing feathers rested in soft hollows. The nests were round and cozy, each one holding something different. One held a dream shaped like a glowing balloon, slowly bobbing up and down. Another held a sleepy swirl of music that played the softest notes you could ever imagine, like a lullaby sung by clouds. Dora stepped closer to one of the nests and peered inside. This nest held a tiny dream creature, curled up like a kitten made of moonlight. It purred gently in its sleep, and every time it breathed out, sparkles floated into the air. Pillow whispered beside her, "These are dreamlings. They grow here before they float off into the night to find someone to dream them." Dora's eyes sparkled with wonder. She had never seen anything so peaceful, so gentle. The dreamlings seemed to shimmer with kindness. Some yawned and stretched their tiny glowing paws. Others flicked their ears and wiggled their toes in their sleep, dreaming of sky, castles, or marshmallow meadows. "Would you like to help tuck them in?" Pillow asked, his voice like a bedtime hum. Dora nodded, and Pillow led her to a soft stack of mini blankets that smelled like vanilla and starlight. Together, they tiptoed from nest to nest, gently covering each dreamling with a tiny blanket. Dora hummed softly as she worked, and the dreamlings snuggled deeper into their nests, sighing happily. After all the dreamlings were tucked in, Dora and Pillow sat on a mossy pillow nearby. The nests glowed faintly in the dark, like cozy lanterns. The air was full of soft sounds, gentle snores, quiet purrs, and the rustle of feathers settling in for sleep. Dora leaned her head on Pillow's soft shoulder. The whisperkin let out a little hum, and Dora felt her eyes blinking slowly. "Do you think I'll dream of them?" she asked in a quiet voice. "Maybe," Pillow whispered. "Or maybe they'll dream of you." A soft breeze drifted through the hilltop, and the nests swayed gently in place. Dora watched the stars above her, blinking slowly, as if they too were growing sleepy. "The dreamlings will be safe now," Pillow said, "and soon they'll float off into the world to find sleepy hearts that need them." Dora smiled and hugged her blanket close. She didn't feel like she was far from home. She felt like she was wrapped in a dream, floating on a feather, with the night holding her gently in its arms. Then, just as softly as it had begun, a new trail of glowing feathers lifted from the ground. They floated into the air, swirling gently in a slow spiral, leading away from the nests and into the next part of the field. Pillow stood and stretched with a big yawn that made his ears flop adorably. "That's the path to the cloud hummocks," he murmured. "The clouds there sing lullabies when they're sleepy. Would you like to hear them?" Dora nodded slowly, her heart full of calm and wonder. She took one last look at the glowing nests, the dreamlings snuggled under their tiny blankets, and she whispered a soft goodnight. Then she followed the glowing feathers again, each step lighter than the last, as the night grew even softer and the dreams floated closer. The path of glowing feathers drifted gently through the air, swirling and fluttering like sleepy butterflies. Dora followed them slowly, her blanket wrapped snugly around her shoulders, and Pillow waddled beside her, his soft paws making only the quietest pitter, pats on the glowing grass. The world around them was calm and dreamy. The breeze was slower here, like it was tiptoeing through the night. The stars above twinkled like they were blinking in slow motion, and the moon, round and kind, smiled down with a warm silver glow. As they walked, Dora noticed the ground was beginning to change. The grass became fluffier, like little clouds were growing right out of the earth. The path curved gently, and the air began to hum, not loudly, but softly, like a lullaby being sung far, far away. Pillow looked up at Dora with a sleepy smile. "We're almost at the cloud hummocks. They're very special clouds. When they get sleepy, they sing. And when they sing, everything around them feels like it's floating." Dora's heart gave a little flutter of excitement. She had never heard a cloud sing before. The path led them up a small hill made of soft puffgrass that squished under their feet like marshmallow bread. At the top of the hill, the world opened up into a wide meadow filled with round, bouncy clouds resting gently on the ground. These weren't big sky clouds. No, these were smaller, cozier clouds, shaped like pillows and dotted across the field like sleepy sheep. Each cloud glowed very faintly, and each one made a different sound: a soft hum, a drowsy sigh, a musical yawn. "These are the cloud hummocks," Pillow whispered. "They're dreaming now, and when they dream, they sing their songs." Dora stepped onto the nearest cloud. It felt like stepping into a warm bubble bath, soft, cozy, and light as air. As she sat down, the cloud gave a little puff and played a gentle hum that made her shoulders relax and her toes feel tingly with calm. All around her, the clouds were humming and sighing in gentle rhythms. Some hummed low, like the sound of a sleepy kitten. Others sang high, like wind chimes made of moonbeams. The sounds overlapped in the loveliest way, like a lullaby being woven from the sky itself. Pillow climbed onto a nearby cloud and gave a happy little bounce. His cloud let out a musical giggle, and Dora giggled too. "Try this one," Pillow said, pointing to a cloud shaped like a heart. "It sings the dreamer's waltz." Dora climbed over and sat gently on the heart-shaped cloud. As soon as she settled in, the cloud began to hum a soft three-beat rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It was slow and lovely, and made Dora want to sway from side to side. She closed her eyes and let the sound wrap around her like a warm scarf. The field of clouds hummed and sang all around her, a chorus of sleepiness and peace. The stars above seemed to sway along with the melody, and even the wind danced slowly through the air, like it was dreaming too. Pillow leaned back on his cloud, his eyes half closed. "Sometimes travelers fall asleep here," he murmured. "The clouds sing them into dreams, and when they wake, they feel like they've been cuddled by the sky." Dora yawned a little, her eyelids growing heavier. She lay back on the heart cloud, letting her head sink into its pillowy softness. The cloud sang gently beneath her, and with every note, her thoughts drifted a little farther away, floating like feathers on a breeze. Then, as if the clouds wanted to play, they began to lift gently into the air. Not too high, just a slow, soft float, like being rocked in a cradle made of fluff. Dora's cloud rose with the others, and soon she was drifting just above the ground. Floating between stars and feathers, her blanket wrapped around her like a hug. The clouds hummed in harmony, their lullabies weaving together into one soft song. Dora felt like she was inside a dream, with no sharp edges, no loud sounds, and nothing at all to worry about. She looked over and saw Pillow floating nearby, his eyes closed, a tiny smile on his face. Other clouds floated around them, carrying tiny dream creatures, sleepy butterflies, and even a drowsy owl who blinked once, then dozed off again. Everything was slow and gentle and cozy. Dora stretched her arms above her head, then let them fall softly onto her belly. The cloud beneath her sighed with happiness, and the song it sang slowed down even more, like it knew she was almost asleep. After some time, the clouds began to drift back down to the meadow, settling softly onto the puffgrass. Dora sat up slowly, her limbs feeling warm and floaty. Pillow gave a sleepy bounce and whispered, "That was a good float. The clouds really liked you." Dora smiled, her cheeks glowing with quiet joy. She felt calm, like her heart was resting on a pillow. The humming clouds gave one last soft sigh as they drifted back into their dreams, and the night around them grew even quieter. Then, from the edge of the meadow, more glowing feathers began to rise. They floated into the air gently, forming a path that curved through the trees and sparkled faintly in the moonlight. "The next place is the Meadow of Murmurs," Pillow said softly. "It's where the flowers whisper bedtime stories to the stars." Dora stood slowly, her blanket wrapped close. and followed the floating feathers once again. Each step was softer than the last, as the night deepened and the dreams grew even sweeter. The night air was as soft as a sigh as Dora followed the floating feathers away from the sleepy cloud hummocks. The gentle hums of the clouds faded behind her like the end of a lullaby, leaving the world wrapped in a quiet hush. Pillow waddled beside her, his fluffy paws brushing against the grass that now shimmered with tiny sparkles, like stardust had drifted down to rest there. The feathers ahead glowed gently, bobbing in the air like sleepy fireflies, always just within reach, showing her the way. They walked slowly, with no need to hurry. Dora's blanket trailed behind her like a soft cape, and her slippers made no sound at all. The trees on either side of the path leaned in closer now, their branches thin and silvery, their leaves shaped like tiny bells. But the bells didn't chime, they only rustled softly, like whispers in a dream. Soon, the path opened into a wide, peaceful meadow. It was the meadow of murmurs. The grass here was soft and tall, brushing gently against Dora's legs as she stepped through it. The flowers were unlike any she had ever seen. They glowed with soft colors, pale pinks, gentle blues, sleepy purples, and their petals moved slowly, as if stretching after a long nap. But the most magical thing of all was the sound. All around them, the flowers were whispering. Not loudly, not clearly, just soft, soothing murmurs that floated through the air like bedtime stories told by the wind. The whispers didn't have words Dora could quite understand, but she didn't need to. They felt peaceful, they felt kind, they felt safe. Pillow smiled and pointed to a cluster of glowing blossoms shaped like tiny stars. "These are dreampitals," he said softly. "They tell their stories to the stars every night. The stars listen, and then they carry those stories into children's dreams." Dora tiptoed closer and knelt beside the dreampitals. She leaned in, and the petals turned toward her like they could feel her listening. Their whispers grew just a little clearer, and though the words still danced out of reach, Dora felt their meaning settle gently in her heart. She heard something about a sleepy dragon who snored out clouds, and a moon that once wore pajamas. She heard a story about a fox who painted dreams with a glowing tail, and a kitten who floated to the stars in a basket made of yarn. Each whisper was soft and slow, like a lullaby made of petals and stars. "The flowers love when someone listens," Pillow said, curling up on a patch of moss nearby. Dora smiled and kept listening, her eyes slowly blinking, her body swaying gently with the rhythm of the murmurs. Then, one small flower, the color of soft buttercream, reached out a single petal and touched Dora's knee. The whisper it gave was quieter than a breath. "Would you like to plant a dream?" Dora blinked and looked down. The flower's center glowed faintly, and beside it, the grass had parted to reveal a tiny patch of fresh, fluffy soil. "You can plant a dream of your own," Pillow murmured. "Everyone who visits the meadow of murmurs can leave one behind." Dora thought for a moment. What would she dream into the world? She gently reached into her pocket and pulled out a little ribbon she had tucked there earlier that evening. It was a soft blue ribbon that had once wrapped around a storybook her grandmother gave her, a book filled with tales about stars and clouds and kind creatures. She held the ribbon over the soil, and as she let it fall, a tiny glow bloomed beneath it. The soil shimmered, and from the spot where the ribbon landed, a small bud began to rise. The bud opened slowly into a flower with petals shaped like tiny pages. It glowed gently, and when it whispered, Dora could hear the softest story beginning to form, a story about a girl with cocoa, brown eyes and a star-stitched blanket who followed feathers into a dreamy world. The flower was dreaming of her. She smiled and gave the flower a soft pat, then stood and looked around. The meadow was full of glowing blossoms and quiet stories, each one floating gently into the night. Some rose up into the sky like bubbles, drifting toward the stars. Others curled into the grass, humming to themselves. Everything was calm. Everything was soft. Everything was sleepy. Pillow stood and stretched with a tiny yawn. His ears drooped a little, and he blinked slowly. "There's one more place to visit before the feathers lead us home," he said with a little bounce. "The Moonberry Grove. That's where wishes go to rest." Dora's heart fluttered gently with wonder, and she gave the meadow of murmurs one last, lingering look. The flowers waved their petals at her, as if saying good night, and their whispers followed her like a soft song, growing fainter with each step. The glowing feathers rose again, swirling ahead of her like fireflies made of dreams. Dora followed them, her blanket wrapped close, her heart full of peaceful stories, and the meadow behind her whispered one last time into the night, sending its gentle tales into the sky. The feather path floated softly ahead, winding like a sleepy river through the dreaming night. Dora walked slowly, her slippers brushing through stardust, tipped grass, and Pillow padded beside her, his fluffy tail swaying like a feather in the breeze. The air was cooler now, but not cold. It was the kind of breeze that made you want to snuggle deeper into your blanket and hum a quiet tune to yourself. Dora hugged her star-stitched blanket tightly, feeling the warmth of the meadow's stories still nestled in her chest. Ahead, the trees began to change. They weren't tall and silver like before. These were round and gentle, with trunks shaped like soft spirals and leaves that glowed pale lavender and blue. The leaves didn't rustle like normal ones. They made a sound like tiny bells being brushed by clouds. The sound was so soft, it tickled Dora's ears like a lullaby whispered from far away. "This is the Moonberry Grove," Pillow whispered, his voice as light as a feather. "It's where moonberries grow, and the wishes inside them sparkle until they fall asleep." Dora looked up. Hanging from the trees were round berries that shimmered like tiny moons. Some were silver with swirls of gold. Others were soft pink with glowing speckles. They didn't shine like stars. No, their glow was much softer, like candlelight behind a curtain. She stepped into the grove, and the soft moss beneath her feet felt like warm cake. The moonberries swayed gently on their branches, and each one gave off a quiet hum, the tiniest sound, like a dream breathing. "Would you like to pick one?" Pillow asked, his round eyes blinking slowly. Dora nodded and reached up to a berry that was just at the height of her hand. It was pale blue with little sparkles that shimmered in slow circles. As soon as her fingers brushed it, the moonberry gave a gentle sigh and released itself into her palm. It was warm, not hot but cozy, like it had been holding a wish for a very long time. "What do I do with it?" Dora asked softly, cradling the berry like a baby star. Pillow smiled and pointed to a circle of stones nearby. In the center was a small pool of glowing water. "Moon water," he whispered. It glowed white and soft, like melted snowflakes. "That's where the moonberries rest," Pillow said. "When you place your berry in the pool, its wish is set free, and it begins to dream." Dora walked slowly to the pool and knelt beside it. The water was perfectly still, and when she leaned over, she saw her own sleepy face reflected there, surrounded by floating lights. She gently placed the moonberry into the pool. As soon as it touched the water, it began to glow brighter. It spun slowly, and the sparkles around it danced like sleepy fireflies. Then, with a tiny fizz, the moonberry opened. From inside, a soft light floated up. It rose into the air like a bubble and shimmered gently, showing Dora a dream. It was a wish. The light showed a little bear cub curled up inside a cozy cave with a glowing lantern and a pile of soft blankets. The bear cub blinked happily, yawned, and snuggled into a nest of pillows. Above the cave, stars blinked slowly, and a quiet song played on the wind. The wish was simple: a cozy place to rest, a warm light, a peaceful night. Dora watched with wide eyes as the dream bubble floated higher, then drifted gently into the sky, joining other soft lights, already floating among the treetops. All around the grove, other moonberries glowed quietly in their trees. Some fell with a gentle plop, as if they knew it was time. Others waited, their light dim but steady, dreaming their quiet dreams. Pillow sat beside her, watching the sky. "Some of the wishes are from children," he whispered. "Others are from stars. Some are from sleepy animals. And a few are from dreams themselves." Dora leaned against his soft fur and looked up at the sky. The dream bubbles floated gently like lanterns, never rushing, never bursting, just drifting, glowing, dreaming. The air in the grove grew quieter still. Even the breeze seemed to hush. A few moonberries blinked like they were falling asleep right on the branch. Dora closed her eyes for a moment, just listening. There were no sharp sounds here. No loud noises. Only the rustle of dreamy leaves, the hum of wishes, and the soft sound of glowing berries gently bobbing above. After what felt like the coziest moment in the world, Pillow stood up and stretched. "The moonberries are resting now," he said. "The grove will dream until morning." Dora gave the moonwater pool one last look. The surface was smooth again, and tiny sparkles drifted just beneath like sleepy fish. A new path of feathers had already begun to rise. This time, they glowed with a silvery hue, like moonlight brushed with sugar. They floated up through an arch of tree branches, making a soft tunnel of light. "Where does this path go?" Dora whispered, already feeling sleepier than ever before. Pillow smiled and whispered, "To the snuggle hollow. That's where dream travelers go when it's almost time to rest." Dora nodded slowly. Her legs felt floaty. Her eyes blinked slowly. Her heart was full of warmth. She followed the feather path once more, her blanket wrapped close, her feet stepping softly through the dreaming grove. And behind her, the moonberry grove glowed gently in the dark, full of wishes, full of dreams, all softly floating, softly resting, softly sleeping. The silver, feather path led Dora deeper into the night, through the soft arch made of sleepy branches and glowing leaves. Each step she took felt lighter, as if the ground itself were made of hush and dreams. Her star-stitched blanket fluttered gently around her shoulders, and Pillow waddled quietly at her side, his fluffy ears bouncing with every step. The air was cooler now, but not chilly. It was like the breath of a quiet lullaby, brushing past her cheeks, and carrying with it the scent of warm milk and lavender. Somewhere far above, the stars blinked slowly, and the moon began to lower, settling into its own cozy slumber. The feathers ahead floated slower, drifting one by one, as if they too were growing sleepy. Soon, the path opened into a wide, round clearing. The grass here was extra thick and puffy, like someone had laid out beds of clouds and tucked them gently into the earth. Low hills circled the clearing, and on top of each hill were soft glowing lanterns shaped like teardrops, glowing with a gentle golden light. "Welcome to Snuggle Hollow," Pillow whispered, his voice barely louder than a breath. "This is where dream travelers rest before returning home. It's the coziest place in all the dreamland." Dora stepped into the hollow and felt the ground beneath her give just a little, like a giant featherbed. The grass rustled gently around her ankles, and little tufts of glowing fluff floated by, like sleepy dandelions drifting on the air. Scattered around the hollow were nests, but not just any nests. These were made of soft velvet twigs, moon thread, and sleepy feathers. They were shaped like little boats, each one big enough for one dream traveler to curl into and rest. Dora looked at them with wide, wondering eyes. "They're dream nests," Pillow said. "When you lie inside one, you can hear the dreams whispering to you." "Would I be able to hear them?" Dora asked softly. Pillow nodded. "Only if your heart is quiet and your eyes are full of stars." Dora smiled, her eyelids already growing heavy. She walked slowly to the nearest nest, its edges glowing softly like a warm hug. The inside was filled with the fluffiest pillows she had ever touched. They were cool at first, then warm, just like slipping into your favorite blanket on a rainy day. She climbed in, pulling her blanket close, and nestled deep into the nest. It curved around her perfectly, like it had been waiting just for her. The moment she settled in, the nest gave a tiny sigh, and the world grew even quieter. Pillow curled into a smaller nest nearby. He tucked his ears beneath his chin and let out a little hum of joy. Dora lay still, her eyes blinking slowly. The stars above the clearing twinkled in slow patterns, and the lanterns on the hills flickered like sleepy heartbeat pulses. Then, ever so softly, the dreams began to whisper. They weren't loud. They weren't clear. They were soft, like thoughts floating on feathers. They drifted around her, curling through the air like sleepy fog. One whispered of a sky made of cotton candy, where children rode on jellybean birds. Another told of a gentle whale who sang lullabies to the moon every night from a sea made of stars. And another, a very quiet one, whispered about a little girl with brown eyes who followed glowing feathers all the way to a place that felt like home. Dora listened, breathing slow and deep. The dreams didn't tell her what to think. They just drifted by, wrapping her in warmth, like someone cuddling her with words. The ground beneath her nest pulsed gently, like the world itself was breathing. In and out. In and out. A soft rhythm that made her body feel heavy in the nicest way. Pillow let out a tiny snore, and Dora smiled. She looked up at the sky, where the stars had begun to yawn and stretch, fading just a little as if they were getting ready for their own bedtime. A soft breeze brushed her cheek, and the feathers above her nest floated down, one by one, tucking themselves around the edges like a lullaby tucking in its last line. Dora closed her eyes. The nest was warm. The world was still. The dreams whispered softly and slowly. Like honey dripping from a spoon, she began to drift, not away from the dream, but deeper into it. She didn't need to move. She didn't need to think. She just needed to rest. And so she did. The snuggle hollow glowed faintly in the quiet, a place made for sleepy hearts and peaceful thoughts. All around, other dream travelers nestled in their nests, wrapped in blankets and dreams, their breath soft and slow. Above them, the lantern lights dimmed. The stars blinked one last sleepy blink, and the dreams kept whispering. Always whispering, always gentle, always kind. The hush of Snuggle Hollow lingered like a soft song, wrapping around Dora as she rested in her feathery nest. The dreams still whispered, not in words, but in feelings, calm, warm, safe. They drifted lazily through the air like invisible lullabies, circling her gently, brushing her cheeks, curling into her hair like sleepy fireflies. Though her eyes were closed, Dora could feel everything, the softness beneath her, like 1,000 tiny pillows. The coolness of the night air, like a quiet kiss on her forehead. The warmth of the blanket wrapped around her like a hug that never ended. She didn't want to leave, but she wasn't sad. The dream was changing again, just like a page in a storybook slowly turning itself. Then, very softly, she heard a tiny sound, a kind of fluff, like a sleepy butterfly stretching its wings. Dora opened her eyes just a little. Above her nest, A new cluster of glowing feathers had gathered, gently circling in the air. These were softer than before, almost see-through, like they were made of morning mist and moonlight. They floated down one by one, landing lightly around her nest, forming a glowing circle of light. Pillow's voice floated through the hush, so soft it felt like part of the dream. "The feathers are ready to take you to the nestle nook," he said, stretching from his own little nest with a sleepy smile. "It's the last place before the dream returns you home." Dora sat up slowly, her blanket still wrapped around her like a cocoon. Her hair was full of tiny feathers, and her cheeks were rosy from the warmth of rest. She looked around the hollow once more. All the other nests were still and glowing. The dream travelers inside were deep in their dreams, smiles on their faces. With one more deep breath, Dora stepped out of her nest. The feathers gathered closer now, swirling gently around her feet, lifting lightly into the air like a soft spiral staircase. Pillow hopped beside her, blinking slowly, his fluffy tail curling like a sleepy question mark. Together, they followed the feathers once more. This time, the path didn't go through a forest or meadow. It floated gently upward, lifting them ever so slightly off the ground. Dora's feet brushed the air, and her heart felt like a bubble. She wasn't flying, not really, just drifting, like a dandelion seed caught in a breeze. The stars above were dimmer now, and the sky had begun to change. Not dark, not light, but something in between. A soft sky, like the color of early morning dreams. Then, ahead of them, Dora saw it. Nestled between two glowing hills was a round, quiet place. Not quite a room, not quite a field. It was made of soft light and gentle shadows. The feathers led her down into it like a leaf floating into a pond. This was the nestle nook. It was the coziest place she had ever seen. There were soft chairs shaped like clouds, and little hammocks made of moon, threads swaying slowly in the breeze. There were shelves full of books that whispered their stories aloud in tiny voices, and baskets of warm glowing stones that looked like sleepy stars. The air smelled like warm cookies and bedtime songs. Everything glowed, but not too much. Just enough to see the softness of the world. Dora stepped into the nook, and the feathers circled around her once more. They curled into a soft circle on the ground, like they were tucking themselves in. "This is where dreams curl up to rest before they head home," Pillow said, hopping onto a cushion shaped like a sleepy snail. "It's like the dream's goodnight hug." Dora smiled and walked to a round, low couch that looked like it was made from a melted marshmallow. She sat down and sank into it with a happy sigh. It hugged her back. From the walls of the nook, soft lights blinked like little eyes, and a quiet music began to play. Not a song, really, but a sound. A warm sound. Like the way your room feels when someone tucks you in. Dora leaned back and looked up. The sky above the nook had turned a gentle peach color, like the first yawn of morning. The stars were still there, but they were fading quietly, like they were tiptoeing away so dreams could rest. Pillow yawned hugely and curled up beside her, his head resting on her lap. "Even dream guides get sleepy," he mumbled softly, already half asleep. Dora petted his soft ears and smiled. Around them, the nook sighed with comfort. The books whispered, the hammocks swayed, the feathers glowed, and then, very gently, something new appeared in the air. It was a window, made of light and shimmer. Through it, Dora could see her own cozy bed, her stuffed bunny Mr. Fluff still waiting with his button eyes and tiny stitched smile. The window didn't rush her. It just waited, glowing softly. Pillow peeked up at her. "When you're ready, the feathers will take you home," he said. "But there's no hurry. The nook is yours until you're ready to wake." Dora leaned back and closed her eyes again. For a while, She just listened. To the hum of the room, to the sound of feathers settling, to the quiet hush of dreams curling up for their own rest. She was warm. She was safe. She was happy. And when it was time to return, she knew the feathers would know. But for now, she rested in the nestle nook, wrapped in light, wrapped in warmth, wrapped in the last soft sigh of the dream. Dora stayed curled in the marshmallow soft couch, her star-stitched blanket wrapped around her shoulders like a hug that never let go. The nestle nook was so still, so gentle, it felt like time itself had curled up in a sleepy ball and decided to nap alongside her. The glowing feathers hovered nearby, drifting slowly in the warm air. They didn't whisper or rush. They simply waited, like friends who knew the dream wasn't quite finished yet. Pillow snoozed beside her, his soft body rising and falling with each snuggly breath. His ears twitched now and then, as if he were dreaming of floating clouds or singing flowers. Dora gently stroked his fur, watching it shimmer slightly under the soft nook light. All around them, the nook pulsed with calm. The glowing books hummed quietly on their shelves. The hammocks swayed like sleepy cradles, and even the stones in the baskets blinked softly, as if they too needed just a little more rest. Dora's eyes wandered upward to the shimmer window, the one that showed her own cozy bedroom. It was still there, glowing softly, but it didn't call to her just yet. Her bed looked warm, her stuffed bunny right where she had left him, but the dream still had one more gentle breath to take. Then, as if the nook itself had heard her thoughts, a soft golden light appeared beside her. It sparkled like morning mist catching the first sunrise. Slowly, the light began to take shape, round and floaty, with little wings made of light. It was a dream moth. Dora had never seen one before, but somehow she knew exactly what it was. The dream moth flitted toward her, its wings trailing glimmer, dust in the air. It didn't speak, but its presence felt like a whisper in her heart. It hovered close, then gently landed on her arm. At that moment, Dora felt a warm, glowing feeling spread from her chest all the way to her toes. The dream moth was sharing something with her, a memory of the dream, a piece to carry home. She closed her eyes. In her mind, she saw the dreamy feather field, where glowing feathers floated like lullabies. She felt the soft hum of the cloud hummocks, where sleepy clouds sang her into the sky. She heard the whispers of the meadow of murmurs, and saw the moonberries glowing gently in their trees. And she remembered the snuggle hollow, where dreams curled up like kittens in feather nests. All of it was still inside her, and somehow always would be. When she opened her eyes again, the dream moth gave a little flick of its wings and rose into the air. It circled her once, then drifted toward the shimmer window. As it passed through, it left behind a trail of golden sparkles that slowly faded into the soft light of the nook. Pillow stirred and blinked sleepily. Was that a dream moth? He mumbled, his voice thick with warmth. Dora nodded slowly. I think it gave me a dream to keep. Pillow smiled and yawned, stretching so far his ears flopped over his eyes. That means the dream is ready to carry you home, he murmured, and the feathers will know just when to go. Dora looked toward the shimmer window once more. Her bedroom was waiting softly. The moon outside her real window was dipping lower in the sky. The corners of the room were still full of shadowy quiet, and Mr. Fluff was exactly where she had left him, tucked under the covers. She felt ready, not rushed, just ready. The feathers around her began to lift, swirling slowly, their glow turning a shade more silvery. They rose higher and higher, curling around her like sleepy wind. Dora stood, gently gathering her blanket around her shoulders and giving Pillow one last sleepy hug. Will I see you again? She asked softly. Pillow smiled and nodded. will always be here, in the dream places. Dreams never really go away. They just float a little higher until you need them again." Dora nodded, and her heart felt warm and full. The glowing feathers gathered around her feet, lifting her gently off the couch. They rose slowly, carrying her through the air like a leaf on a lullaby. The nestle nook faded behind her, glowing quietly, holding the dreams of dreamers still curled in rest. The shimmer window came closer, its light soft and golden. And Dora felt her eyes grow even heavier, her body even lighter, like she was made of cloud and calm. The feathers carried her through the window, back into her bedroom, where the night was still and the stars blinked their last sleepy blinks. She landed softly on her bed, her blanket still wrapped around her, and the feathers tucked themselves gently around her like invisible friends. Mr. Fluff was there, waiting with his stitched smile, and Dora hugged him close. The feathers faded, the shimmer window slipped away, and the dream settled into her heart like a lullaby's final note. And all around her, everything was still, everything was warm, everything was peace. The quiet of Dora's bedroom was soft and deep, like the hush that comes just before a whisper. The night had settled gently outside her window, and the moon hung low in the sky, glowing like a sleepy lantern. Everything was still. Everything was warm. Dora lay in her bed, tucked beneath her cozy covers. Mr. Fluff curled close to her chest. The glowing feathers had tucked themselves gently beneath her pillow, leaving behind just the tiniest shimmer in the air. A quiet reminder of the dream she had carried home. Her eyes were closed, but her heart was still wide open, full of light and softness, and the memory of every place she had been. She could still feel the hum of the cloud hummocks in her bones, the whisper of the meadow of murmurs in her ears, and the warmth of the moonberries glowing through her fingertips. The air in her room, even now, smelled faintly of feathers and starlight. And just when she thought the dream was over, a gentle tap sounded at her window. Not loud, not sharp, just a tiny tip-tap, like a feather saying hello. Dora opened one eye, then the other. Her room was still dim and peaceful, but at the window, floating with slow, dreamy grace, was a small puffball of light. It shimmered softly, and Dora knew at once. It was one of the dream feathers. But this one had come back. She sat up slowly, careful not to wake Mr. Fluff, and tiptoed to the window. When she opened it, the feather drifted in like a snowflake, circling once around her head, then gliding down into her palm. It was warm, and it was glowing with the tiniest spark of golden light. Dora held it gently. As she did, a new hush filled the room, not an empty hush, but a kind one, like the world was pausing just to listen. Then, in a voice as soft as a sigh, the feather spoke. "Would you like to visit one more place? A place where dreams go when they want to be cuddled?" Dora's heart fluttered like a sleepy butterfly. She nodded. The feather floated up, twirling slowly, and a soft breeze began to fill the room, not from outside, but from somewhere else. Somewhere deeper. The breeze curled around her, lifting her gently off her feet. Not high, just enough for her toes to float an inch above the floor. The feather danced through the air, and a swirl of stardust followed it, painting a quiet path through the room. And in the blink of a dream, Dora was drifting once more, not away from her room, but through it. Through the in-between, where dreams and wakefulness hold hands. She floated past her bookshelf, past the sleepy nightlight shaped like a mushroom, past the little mobile of moons and stars above her bed, and then, gently, quietly, she found herself in a new place. It wasn't far. It felt like a thought you almost remembered. It was the Cuddle Burrow. The Cuddle Burrow wasn't big or bright. It was small, round, and warm, like the inside of a hug. The walls were made of soft, sleepy moss, and the floor was covered in thick, glowing fluff. The ceiling shimmered with star speckles, and the air was filled with the quiet sound of breathing. Not hers, not anyone's, just the sound of something very old and very kind resting nearby. In the center of the burrow was a nest, not a bird's nest, not a feather nest, a dream nest. It was made of everything: soft velvet vines, moon, moss, sleepy feathers, and the gentle giggles of dreaming kittens. It pulsed with a quiet glow, like a heartbeat in slow motion. The feather floated down and landed on the nest. The moment it touched, the nest opened just a little, enough for Dora to climb inside. She didn't have to be asked twice. She tiptoed in, curled her legs beneath her, and settled into the nest's center. It cuddled her from all sides, wrapping her in warmth and hush. And then, the dreams came. Not rushing, not loud, just drifting, one by one, curling around her like a lullaby. She saw gentle clouds playing hide and seek through the stars. She saw a sleepy turtle floating on a lily pad made of moonlight. She saw a library where every book whispered your name when you opened it. She saw a dream of her own, walking hand in hand with Pillow through the dreamy feather field, feathers curling like ribbons in the air. And as each dream passed, she didn't need to chase them. She just let them float by, each one brushing her with peace. The cuddle burrow pulsed with calm. The nest rocked slightly, just enough to make her eyelids grow heavier. The air smelled like warm cookies and quiet wishes. Outside, the stars blinked slower. Inside, her breathing matched the rhythm of the nest. In and out. In and out. Dora hugged Mr. Fluff closer and snuggled deeper into the nest. The dreams drifted slower now, like snowflakes deciding where to land. The feather glowed faintly beside her, its light dimming gently, as if it too were ready to sleep. And Dora was almost there, almost dreaming inside the dream, almost floating inside the hush, almost asleep, wrapped in the dream nest, wrapped in the cuddle burrow, wrapped in the softest, safest sleep. The cuddle burrow was the quietest place Dora had ever known. Even silence had a sound here, like the gentle hush of a mother's lullaby, or the soft whoosh of stars drifting through the sky. The dream nest cradled her like a warm teacup, its edges rising just high enough to hold her close without letting her go. She nestled in deeper, pulling her star-stitched blanket up to her chin. Mr. Fluff was tucked sweetly into the curve of her arm, his button eyes blinking slowly, as if he too was slipping into the soft folds of sleep. The glowing feather beside her pulsed gently, its light now dim and golden, like the last candle before bedtime. It didn't float anymore. It rested, right there on the edge of the nest, as if it had found its home. All around the nest, the cuddle burrow breathed with her. The walls shimmered with every inhale. The mossy floor sighed with every exhale. It was as if the whole burrow had become a blanket for the dream itself, holding it, rocking it, whispering sweet things to it. Dora's eyelids fluttered, and the dreams began to return. But these dreams were even softer now. They came not as pictures or stories, but as feelings. She felt the touch of the dreamy feather field, how the feathers had brushed her cheeks like butterfly kisses. She felt the hum of the cloud hummocks, how their lullabies had floated through her bones, like sleepy music. She felt the whispers of the meadow of murmurs, how the flowers had shared their secrets with the stars, and she felt the moonberries in her hands once more, the warmth of wishes being born. Each feeling was a gentle wave, washing over her, soothing her, wrapping her in the kind of peace that only dreams can give. Above her, the ceiling of the burrow flickered with little lights. Not stars, but something softer. They blinked slowly, like tiny creatures rocking themselves to sleep. The nest beneath her shifted just a little, like it was tucking her in. Pillow's voice came then, not from beside her, but from somewhere very near in her heart. "You are safe, Dora. You are warm. The dream remembers you, and it will always wait for you." She smiled, just a little, and the dream smiled back. The feather gave one final shimmer, then curled in on itself like a sleepy pet, its glow fading into a soft twinkle before becoming still. Dora's breath slowed, her fingers relaxed, her toes curled gently into the nest, and the dream deepened. No more pictures now. No more places to walk. No more feathers to follow. Just rest. Just warmth. Just the soft, quiet hush of peace. The cuddle burrow dimmed its lights, closed its glowing eyes, and settled in for its own slumber. Outside, the stars faded slowly into the early light of morning. Inside, the last dream curled into Dora's heart like a kitten into a blanket. And everything became still. The world was so quiet now, it felt as though even the stars had paused to take a breath. Dora rested in the dream nest at the heart of the cuddle burrow, her body wrapped in sleep, her heart wrapped in warmth. The air around her was no longer filled with fluttering feathers or glowing lights. It was filled with something even softer: stillness. Stillness like the space between two lullaby notes. Stillness like the moment when a candle flickers just before going out. Stillness like the last blink of a sleepy eye. The nest held her gently, rocking her not with motion, but with feeling. Without moving, Dora felt herself drifting, deeper and deeper into the dream. It wasn't the kind of dream with pictures or places. It was a dream made of comfort. A dream made of rest. Though her eyes were closed, she could feel something gentle happening all around her. The cuddle burrow was beginning to hum. Not like the clouds or the flowers, but like the earth itself was singing her a lullaby. It was a hum that said, "You are safe here." It was a hum that said, "You've wandered far enough." It was a hum that said, "It's time to return." Even the walls of the burrow, soft and mossy, gave a little shimmer as the humming passed through them. The speckled lights in the ceiling dimmed one by one, like stars putting on their pajamas. The air seemed to pull a blanket over itself, breathing slower than before. Dora stirred just a little, her fingers curling around Mr. Fluff. It was almost time. Not quite, but almost. She felt the dream winding down inside her, not ending, but curling up like a sleepy animal preparing for its nap. The adventures, the magic, the floating feathers and whispering petals, they were all still there, nestled in the warmest part of her memory. They weren't going away. They were just resting too. Then, very faintly, she heard the sound of feathers fluttering. Not many, just one. A single feather, floating down from above, glowing softly with silver light. It landed on the edge of her nest and shimmered once, like a tiny goodnight kiss. Dora opened her eyes slowly. The nest was still cradling her, the burrow still warm and quiet. But she felt something new in her chest, a gentle tug, like the dream was holding her hand and beginning to walk her home. The feather lifted into the air, floating just above her head. It didn't buzz or sparkle or sing. It just waited. Dora sat up slowly, her blanket falling softly around her shoulders. The moment she moved, the nest gave a low, loving sigh, not sad, not goodbye, just thank you. She stood, her toes sinking into the mossy floor. Mr. Fluff dangled from her arm, his stitched smile as sleepy as hers. The feather floated ahead, leading her through the burrow's soft archway. The same way she had come in, though now it felt different. It felt like the end of a bedtime story. Dora stepped out of the cuddle burrow, and the dream world welcomed her one last time. The sky above was a soft, glowing gray, the kind of sky that comes just before morning. The stars were gone now, tucked into their own beds behind the clouds. The breeze was barely there, like it was sleeping too, and in the distance, she saw it. Her bedroom window, not glowing, not shimmering, just there, steady, waiting. The feather floated toward it, slow and gentle, like it knew there was no need to rush. Dora followed. She turned once to look back at the dream world. The feather field, the cloud hummocks, the meadow of murmurs, the moonberry grove, the snuggle hollow, the nestle nook, and the cuddle burrow, all of it seemed to wave to her, though nothing moved. It waved with feeling, with memory, with love. Pillow wasn't there, but she felt him, like a soft paw on her shoulder, like a voice in her ear saying, "Sweet dreams, Dora." She smiled, then turned back to the window. The feather floated through first, disappearing with a soft flicker of light. Dora stepped through next, and just like that, she was home. The blanket still around her, Mr. Fluff still in her arms, her room still quiet and full of shadows. The pillow beneath her cheek was cool. The bed was warm, and the dream was still with her, not outside anymore, but inside, soft and glowing, tucked in right beside her heart. The world was still wrapped in night, but it was a softer night now, one that felt like a gentle whisper, instead of a deep shadow. Dora lay quietly in her bed, her blanket pulled up to her chin. Her fingers curled around Mr. Fluff's fuzzy paw. Her eyes were closed, but behind them, the dream still glowed like a sleepy lantern. She didn't need to move. She didn't need to speak. All she had to do was breathe slowly and let the warmth of the dream settle around her like a second blanket. In and out. In and out. Each breath carried a memory with it, like a tiny boat floating across a calm sea. She remembered the dreamy feather field, where the feathers had first called her name. She remembered the cloud hummocks, where lullabies had floated through the sky like music made of clouds. She remembered the meadow of murmurs, where blossoms whispered bedtime stories to the stars. She remembered the moonberry grove, where wishes bloomed like glowing fruit and drifted softly into the night. And she remembered the snuggle hollow, the nestle nook, and the final, hush-filled cuddle burrow, where even dreams curled up to sleep. They were all inside her now, not fading, not disappearing, just resting, like sleepy thoughts curled up in a cozy corner of her heart. Outside her window, the sky was just beginning to change. The stars had gone quiet, slipping away one by one, like children tiptoeing to bed after a long, happy evening. The moon was yawning, low and silver, ready to dip beneath the hills. And in the trees beyond, the first birds had not yet begun to sing. It was that gentle in-between time, not quite night, not quite day, the perfect time for one last dream to drift through. Just then, Dora felt something soft against her cheek. She opened her eyes slowly. A single feather, pale and glowing softly, had landed on her pillow. It didn't float or shimmer like before. It just rested there, still and calm, like it was tired too. Dora smiled sleepily and reached out to touch it. The moment her fingers brushed the feathery edge, the room grew just a little warmer. Not in temperature, but in feeling, like a long hug or a soft lullaby hummed just for her. The feather didn't speak, but Dora didn't need words to understand. It had come to say good night, or perhaps, good morning. It had come to remind her that what she had seen and felt in the dream was real in the way that matters most. Real in her heart, real in her quiet, cozy soul. She placed the feather beneath her pillow, careful and slow, like tucking in a secret. Then she settled back into the bed, her head sinking into the softness, her blanket hugging her close. Mr. Fluff was right there beside her, just where he'd always been. And the last dream, the one she hadn't even known she was waiting for, began to unfold. It was a dream with no beginning and no end. A dream made of softness and stars, of glowberries and whispering trees, of cuddly creatures and floating feathers. A dream of kindness, a dream of peace, a dream of love so quiet it didn't need to be spoken aloud. Dora drifted deeper, past thoughts, past words, into the hush where only dreams live. She didn't know how long she would sleep. She didn't care. The world outside could wait, because inside, everything was warm and glowing, and she was exactly where she needed to be, safe, resting, dreaming. Dora's breath rose and fell in a slow, sleepy rhythm, like waves gently brushing the sand. The room was still, the air warm, and the quiet so deep it felt like the whole world was tucking itself in beside her. Though the dream had begun to settle, its glow hadn't gone. It was still there, soft and steady, floating inside her like a tiny lantern behind her heart. And just when she thought she had drifted too far to feel anything else, she heard a sound. Not loud, not even clear, but soft, like a whisper from the wind. Dora's eyes stayed closed, but her ears listened. It was the faintest flutter of feathers, then the tiniest voice. Familiar, gentle, loving. Dora, pillow. Even in the quiet, even behind her dreams, she knew it was him. Dora didn't open her eyes, but her lips curled into a tiny smile. She didn't need to wake up to know he was near. We just wanted to say thank you, the voice continued, drifting through the hush like a lullaby made of feathers. For listening, for caring, for dreaming with us. The warmth in her chest grew. Then another sound, something like a sigh, or maybe a cuddle, or maybe even a snore from a very sleepy dream creature. Dora, still resting, felt a presence beside her. Not heavy, not big. Just enough to know she wasn't alone. She imagined Pillow curling up gently on the edge of her pillow. His fluffy body tucked into a tiny ball, his ears drooping like sleepy leaves. "We'll always be here," he whispered. "In every dream, in every feather, in every soft breath before sleep." She felt her fingers twitch, like they wanted to pet his soft fur. "And you'll always be welcome in the field, Dora," he added. "The dreamy feather field waits for kind hearts like yours." A lullaby began to hum in the distance, not from outside, not from inside, but from somewhere in between. It was the same lullaby the silver tree had hummed, the same one the clouds had sung, the same one the dream nests had whispered. It was the lullaby of the dream itself, and it was singing her back to sleep. Dora's body grew heavier, but in the nicest way, like she was sinking into a pile of clouds, held up by nothing but love and light. The glow in her chest flickered softly. The hush around her deepened, and Pillow's voice, fainter now, whispered one last time, "Sleep well, dream traveler." Then it faded, like a feather floating away on a breeze. Dora was still. The room was still. Even the stars outside her window had gone to sleep. And yet, in that stillness, the dream lived on, curled up like a kitten in the warmth of her heart. She didn't need to visit the dreamy feather field again tonight. She had already brought it home. It was in the softness of her pillow. It was in the glow beneath her blanket. It was in the way her breath moved, calm and slow. And when she finally opened her eyes again, far, far from now, the dream would still be there, waiting, glowing, whispering gently behind her thoughts. But for now, she rested, with no place to go, no feathers to follow, no stories to chase. Just the quiet rhythm of sleep, wrapping around her like a lullaby with no end. The hush of Dora's room had deepened into the softest silence, the kind that only comes when the whole world is sleeping. The night had tucked itself in, and even the moon, that gentle watcher in the sky, had closed its glowing eye. Dora lay so still beneath her blanket, her breathing calm and steady, like the soft swing of a cradle in the breeze. the dream still lingered in the corners of the room, not in the shape of clouds or glowing feathers anymore, but in the feeling, the warm, safe, peaceful feeling that made her bed feel like the heart of the universe. Tiny sparkles of dreamlight drifted through the air, so faint they could have been imagined. They floated like the last bubbles in a warm bath, rising slowly, then disappearing. The room was quiet, but not empty. It was full of gentle things, the kind of things you can only feel with your heart. And somewhere in that hush, something began to hum. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even music, really. Just a soft, steady sound, like the quiet happiness of a dream that knows it's been loved. The corners of the room brightened, just slightly. Not with daylight. That was still far away, but with a sleepy kind of glow, like the stars had left behind some of their sparkle just for her. The books on her shelf didn't whisper this time. They rested too, keeping their stories warm and ready for another night. The mushroom nightlight cast its little glow across the floor, painting soft shadows that looked like feathers and clouds. It was as if the dream had left tiny footprints behind, not to follow, but to remember. Everything in the room had been touched by the places Dora had visited. The blanket felt fluffier, like it remembered the dreamy feather field. The pillow hummed ever so faintly, like it still carried the song of the cloud hummocks. The air smelled a little like sweet flowers and starlight, like the meadow of murmurs had blown her a kiss goodbye. And tucked beneath her pillow, the tiny feather she'd brought back glowed just a little, not enough to light the room, but enough to let her know she wasn't alone. Not now. Not ever. Because dreams, real dreams, the good, kind, soft ones, don't ever leave. They just curl up inside us, waiting quietly until they're needed again. Dora shifted gently in her sleep, her body wrapped in warmth, her heart wrapped in memory. She dreamed, not of new adventures, but of being held, by the dream world, by the feathers, by the hush. She dreamed of rocking in the silver tree's arms, of floating on a cloud shaped like a lullaby, of whispering to a flower and hearing it whisper back, of curling into a nest made just for her, of glowing moonberries blinking goodnight, of Pillow, her gentle guide, waving sleepily from the edge of the dream as she drifted home. The dream didn't tell her a story tonight. It just stayed with her, quiet, still, kind. The room didn't need to be anything else. It was perfect as it was. A nest, a nook, a burrow of blankets and breath. Outside her window, the earliest light of morning had begun to stretch. Not bright, not bold, just soft strokes of silver and pearl brushing against the sky. The stars had gone to bed. The sun was still yawning. The world was beginning to wake, but not yet. Not just yet, because Dora was still dreaming, and the dream was still holding her. Inside her, the last feather of the night floated gently down and came to rest. And everything was quiet again. Everything was tender. Everything was sleep. The world outside was beginning to glow with the quiet gray of morning. But inside Dora's room, everything remained wrapped in the soft hush of night's last dream. The shadows were gentle, stretching slowly along the floor like sleepy cats, and the air was filled with the peaceful stillness that only comes after the deepest kind of rest. Dora lay tucked beneath her blanket, her hair spread across her pillow like little wisps of cloud. Her cheeks were rosy with warmth, and the corners of her lips still held the tiniest smile, the kind that dreams leave behind when they tiptoe away. Mr. Fluff was nestled close, just where he'd always been, and though his stitched eyes didn't blink, Dora could almost imagine he'd been dreaming too. Beneath her pillow, the little feather, the last of the glowing trail, gave one final shimmer, then settled into stillness. It no longer needed to shine. its work was complete. The dream had returned her home, safe and smiling, wrapped in memories that would glow forever in the coziest corners of her heart. In the quiet, Dora stirred just a little. She didn't open her eyes. Not yet. But in her mind, the dream still drifted. She could feel the feather field stretching wide beneath her toes, soft and endless, with golden plumes rising into the windless sky. She could still hear the hum of the cloud hummocks, their lullabies curling through the air like sleepy music made of velvet. The flowers of the meadow of murmurs still whispered their sweet stories, brushing her thoughts like petals against her cheek. She could almost taste the warm sparkle of the moonberries and feel the dreams inside them floating up, up into the stars. She remembered the quiet nests, the gentle rocking of the snuggle hollow, the slow, sweet rhythm of the nestle nook, and the cuddle burrow. Oh, the cuddle burrow, where dreams rested and wrapped themselves in hush. All of it was still with her. All of it was still part of her. The dream hadn't faded. It had simply tucked itself in, and as she lay there, between sleep and waking, the softest voice brushed her ear, lighter than a breeze, warmer than a sunbeam. "We'll always be here, Dora. Just close your eyes and follow the feathers." Her heart fluttered gently, not loudly or quickly, but like a page turning in a storybook, slow and sure. She didn't need to open her eyes. Not yet. The world outside could wait just a little longer, because this moment, this soft, golden, peaceful moment, was hers. The last feather of the dream curled into her thoughts and whispered the final lullaby. "You are safe. You are loved. You are home." And as the tiniest breath of wind kissed the curtains, and the first shy beam of morning light tiptoed across the floor, Dora drifted into one last, quiet dream, the kind that stays with you even after you've opened your eyes. The kind that says,